so naturally. Did not know it was love. The next thing I felt was you holding me close. What was I gonna do? I let myself go. Now we're flying through the stars. I hope this night will last forever. I've been waiting for you. It's been so long. I knew just what I would do when I heard your song. You filled my heart with a kiss. You gave me freedom. I knew I could not resist. I needed someone. And now we're flying through the stars. I hope this night will last forever.
So, by the way, that song is the new release from our friend Jen Allen, who you hear every year on our program we do, typically in December, about our favorite jazz. I guess sometimes you don't hear it until January. I don't know. But anyway, we love Jen Allen. She's got a new album coming out. I believe the album drops. I think there's a big thing at the side door down in Old Lyme on Saturday night. But she's got a great band and a vocalist. And you know, it takes some guts to cover a Chaka Khan tune. Because if Chaka Khan had, I'd say, 5 more great songs. I mean, she had a fair number of really good songs. But if let's say she had 4 or 5 more, I think she would be up in a whole different category where, like, the most elite soul singers are. Maybe she's in that category anyway. I mean, not too many people can keep up with her. But I think this jazz rendering of it kind of works. In fact, it very much works. Well, what do you expect from Jen Allen? It's going to be great. All right, so it's Ask or Tell Me Anything. Let me remind you of the rules. There are no rules. Well, one of the rules is the phone number. Is that really a rule exactly? 888-720-9677. That's 888-720-WNPR. We're going to show you. And then other than that, you can just talk about whatever you want to talk about. You don't have to talk about what I want to talk about. I want to talk about Freebird, but we're not going to do that. All right, but we might. All right, so let's go to Ken. Ken called in first. Ken is in Windham, Connecticut. Hi, Ken.
Hi, Colin. How are you?
I'm just fine.
Oh, good. Hey, I wanted to talk about Squid Games, and basically, you know, if you watch that movie or that series, every day they come against a new obstacle, you know, and I feel like that's the same way in a political sense. Every day there's something new, some new obstacle to democracy and freedom in the United States. There's some new horrible thing that we have to face every day, especially in a political sense.
I like this. This is an allegory. It's an extended metaphor. It's like,
yes,
I should tell you, by the way, that the series is called Squid Game, singular.
Okay.
So just,
all right.
If you're going to use it, you know, if you're going to call other shows and bring this up, it's Squid Game. I think you're onto something, though. It does feel like Squid Game. Every day there's something attempting to destroy us from a slightly new angle.
Exactly. You know, and I'm watching this and I'm like, oh my God, something new. And, you know, whoever made up these games, they're incredible.
You mean the ones on the TV series as opposed to the ones we're living through? Yes. It's important to make that distinction.
The devil made those
my therapist has told me to try to draw a fairly bright line between cultural fiction and actual political reality, and so I'm really working on that. But it's not easy sometimes. I will say that I'm going to yes and your idea, okay? So my yes and is that another part of Squid Game, now you've got me doing it. Another part of Squid Game is that it's not exactly zero sum. There's a really interesting essay, I think it's in The Economist, about how America's focus on sort of zero sum scenarios drives a lot of the stuff that we're doing now. Like if you let an immigrant in, that means you're somebody who was born here doesn't get a job or something. That's the way we think about stuff. And Squid Game is also somewhat zero sum. Like somebody has to die, and I've only watched the first season, and I thought I've done my duty. But in the first season, my recollection is, some people make it through because other people die.
Right.
And so if the person, it's kind of like the old joke about the two guys running away from the tiger, and one of them says, I don't think we can outrun a tiger. And the guy goes, oh, I only have to outrun you. And that's sort of how Squid Game works, right? You have to make sure that you live. And one of the ways you make sure that you survive any individual game or challenge is for other people to die, And it seems to me that's very true right now, too. Most of the bargains that are being offered to us are, that certain people will not prosper in order for other people to prosper. And we almost can't accept the idea. If you say, well, what if we set up a system where everybody was kind of okay, and they'd say, well, that's socialism, and socialism is bad because it comes from the devil, and then that's the end of the conversation. Right. But I think you're onto something. I think you might have a very important metaphor.
Yeah, thank you. All right, that's all I wanted to.
All right, I think we've concluded a very successful conversation that was uplifting for both of us. I think we can call this a success. All right, now I'm going to go to Catherine. I'm going to give out the number again: 888-720-9677. Don't make me talk about Freebird because I talked about it during the pre-ramble on the YouTubers, whatever that's called, the YouTubies. And so I don't want to do it again, but I could and I might have to. But here's Catherine. By the way, our number, 888-720-9677. 888-720-WNPR. All right, so here we go with Catherine from New London. Hi, Catherine.
Hi, Colin. Excuse me. I'm calling about our protest on Thursday.
Tell us about the protest on Thursday.
So I have more details for you. First of all, it's in memory of John Lewis because he died in 2020 on 7/17. Mm. So and the title of it is Good Trouble Lives On.
Which is a John Lewis thing.
Website.
Yeah. John Lewis.
There's a website.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Good Trouble Lives On, and it's nationwide. It may even be worldwide for all I know. But if you go online and find the website, you'll find out where you can go to a protest on Thursday. Everyone thinks, why Thursday? Well, that's why. It's John Lewis's death 5 years ago that we're commemorating.
All right. Well, good luck with all that. I hope it works out. I don't know. I think there are too many protests, frankly. And I think protests on Thursdays have their problems baked into them. But, for all of that, Godspeed. I hope it's a great protest. All right, so the whole plan here is 888-720-9677. 888-720-WNPR. Anybody can call up who wants to. Okay, I might have to talk about Freebird. So that means, well, actually, I can talk about something else. And then maybe we'll come back to Freebird. So I put this up on Facebook a while ago, but there's something I don't understand, and I'm going to try to. Maybe I could find a metaphor for explaining what I don't understand. So let me do it this way. Let's imagine that it's 1995-ish, 94, 95. I can't remember. I should have looked up the timeline before I used this one. And there's a report. There's a rumor that there's a report that exists about high-ranking people in the federal government fooling around with interns. I wouldn't expect under that circumstances Democrats to hope that would come out. Even not knowing anything, let's sort of imagine pre-Starr report, I did not have sex with that woman. Let's say that all of this is happening, but you got to know who Bill Clinton is. And, I just can't imagine people thinking, well, President Clinton's going to bring this out because he's the perfect person. He's the kind of lion-hearted, pure-souled individual who will be able to bring to light the horrible injustice of high-ranking federal officials getting it on with interns. I would expect Democrats to be going, I hope this report doesn't come out. I'm saying all of this, imagine this is happening before all of the disclosures. Even so, you sort of knew Clinton was a hound dog. So that's why I kind of don't understand this whole Epstein thing. Like, I mean, Donald Trump for most of the 21st century has run around trying to have sex with any woman who would have him, and quite a few women who were not all that inclined to have him. And I mean, just this kind of sexual omnivore, and a guy who was really, really interested in younger women. He's somebody who bragged because he owned sort of a suite of beauty pageants, one of them which was Miss Teen USA, or I think, that because he owned them, he could walk into the dressing room and just like they couldn't kick him out, and he could just, have a gander, I guess. And I mean, and we know the famous, grabbing tape that came out, and we know what E. Jean Carroll has told us. We know the kind of tabloid coverage where he and Marla Maples were bragging to the tabloids what great sex they were having while he was still married to his first wife. And so, I mean, and we know there's pictures of Donald Trump with Jeffrey Epstein that are not doctored. I just don't understand why Trump world and MAGA and QAnon, why they really want this information to come out, and they really believe that that part of the value proposition of Donald Trump is that he's going to clean up Dodge. People are not going to be going around having sex with underage girls anymore. Not once he, is the sheriff again. He's going to take care. Why would anybody think that? Why would anybody believe that was? I'm not even saying that, really in a political way so much as just in the same sense that you kind of knew that Bill Clinton had been sexually out of control during his time as governor of Arkansas. You wouldn't want him. It's what I said before. If there were a report of some activities involving interns in the federal government, if you were a Clinton supporter, you wouldn't want that report to come out. Why do people think? I don't get it. Like, people are really, really mad now at Pam Bondi and various, because they were really and the people who are mad at Pam Bondi are people who voted for Trump. They're MAGA people, because they were really counting on Trump being able to make a clean breast of all these things and, just clean up all the turpitude. I mean, he is turpitude. Why would they think that? Never mind. All right, so let's go to the phones here. We got a lot of interesting calls here. I'm going to go right down the line here. We'll start with Patty. Hi, Patty.
Oh, hey, Colin. I am calling because sometimes I just hear a snippet of you. Mm-hmm. And I heard you say something to the effect of when 9/11 happened, I was thinking about what disaster movie we were living through.
Yes, this was on last week's show. This is the show we did about Joan Didion. Yeah.
Yeah. That's about all I heard in and out of the car. Mm. But what came to mind is 9/11. I don't know why it is, but I found that a lot of the movies that I like, Harvey and Breakfast and Tiffany's and also Fight Club, they're all kind of about spoiler alert, like people are kind of like insane in these movies, but anyway. Now, Harvey,
the first rule about pukas is we don't talk about pukas, right? We don't mention rabbits here. I have a hard time fitting Fight Club into Breakfast at Tiffany's and Harvey.
I think if you think about Fight Club and Harvey side by side.
Okay, help me out.
Anyway, there's
yeah.
But anyway, what I was thinking, I noticed rewatching Fight Club, I hadn't seen it for years. The beginning scene, there's Brad Pitt and Norris. Ed Norton. Anyway, they're there.
Ed Norton.
Yeah. And he says, "I'm sitting here at Ground Zero with Tyler." And then the scene is 2 buildings explode and fall at the end of the movie. And what I realized is that movie came out in 1999 and the book even earlier. So that's just my observance.
Yeah, I mean, there are other instances, there are other movies that seem to be very prophetic of 9/11 or of the reaction to 9/11. McPants might have to help me out with this. Is the Edward Zwick movie called Siege the one with Denzel Washington and Annette Bening and it's called Siege? Okay, I mean The Siege. Excuse me. So I mean that one totally nails what happened, not at 9/11, but what happens afterwards. But I mean, I think when any disaster happens, when the pandemic was going, and we did a couple of shows kind of about the culturally predictive. Well, let me just go back and tell you another thing. Actually, this is really interesting. Mm-hmm. There's a podcast called 9/12, and it's by Dan. Somebody else can help me out with this part too.
Right.
But it's an amazing thing, and one of the episodes is about the fact that, and this is real. That Dan Taberski. So I didn't come up with that on my own. So. The White House and the national security apparatus at a certain point kind of acknowledged to themselves that they couldn't see around corners all that well, that they didn't see anything like this coming, even though there was obviously some intelligence teases about it, that they didn't see it coming, and maybe they weren't going to be that good at anticipating other things that were going to happen. So they brought in a lot of people who were sort of creators from Hollywood, from television and movies. I mean, even like Spike Jonze is one of the people who got brought in. But I think they brought in some of the people from 24 and stuff like that. And they had them work out possible scenarios. And they even did this thing where a couple of times they put something somewhere and the team had to get it back. And it was like at the Washington Monument or something, just to see whether this creative team could figure out how to beat some of the defenses. And so I actually do believe that we are, generally speaking, that we have had a very insidious, gradual evolution into what I call homo culturensis. We're people who we kind of live, at least partly, in our own fictive culture. You know, I mean, I think that's true all over the place. It's not just true about disasters and stuff like that. But, you know, that West Wing is very predictive of things that might actually happen in the White House. And after a while, the people in the White House start doing things because they saw them on West Wing. And there's just a lot of that. And I don't know that it's entirely healthy. It's actually a big part of the book that we were talking about, the Joan Didion book, Alyssa Wilkinson. Apparently I can't remember any names today. Alyssa Wilkinson's book that Didion saw it that way too, that we had really become a species that lived in its own culture, lived in the fictive culture that was invented to entertain us, but became increasingly what we understood as reality. So I think you're onto something. And I also think that Ken, the Squid Game person, is onto something, and maybe everybody's onto something. So fine, that's really good. All right, we're going to talk to Holly. I'm not going to be in disagreement with Holly. Hi, Holly.
Hi. How you doing, Colin?
Good. I'm fine.
You got me thinking when you mentioned your Keurig. You hate your Keurig.
It's not my Keurig. I would never own a Keurig.
I do own a Keurig, but I have a Keurig with a big pot, and I brew a pot. And my husband and I are really trying to be conscious about using less plastic.
Yeah.
So we are getting rid of the pods and just using, the metal refillable. Like we're replacing a lot of our plastic things, especially food, things you put food in. And I don't think it's talked about enough. I know we hear about the microplastics and, they're in our bodies, but looking around my house, I'm like, everything's plastic, plastic cup,
right?
Plastic this.
Yeah.
So that's what I wanted to talk about. You had me thinking about that. I've been really more self-conscious about using, silverware that's actually wood, not, plastic compostable silverware.
Right. But, so, first of all, I'm totally in communion with you about all this stuff. I will say this, that when I first came to work here, like maybe my first week when I was being onboarded, as they say, I happened to be in the room. I guess I was in a room with people who were onboarding me or waterboarding me. I don't know what they were doing to me, but but as an aside, when the meeting ended, one of the executives from the 6th floor said to John Dankosky, who was kind of running the radio operation at that, we've got an extra Keurig up here. Should we bring it down to the 3rd floor so you guys can have a Keurig? And John said no. And John said no. It turned out partly yes, because Keurigs are they produce a lot of unnecessary solid waste that doesn't look like it biodegrades very well. And I wound up doing one of my first shows here about all that. But he also believed that making coffee was a good thing, that if you have a newsroom and people need to drink coffee, that means somebody has to agree to make some coffee, and somebody else maybe has to clean up afterwards, clean up the coffee pot and dump out the grounds and all this kind of stuff. And it was sort of good. It was a communal, Neolithic kind of activity that would bind us primitive hominids together into some coherence of a miniature society. And I thought there was a lot of profundity in that. I thought there was a lot of truth to that idea that, if you all have to make coffee, the kind of coffee that the maestro occasionally will make a pot of coffee drug. But what we have here is Keurig. And there's another problem with Keurig, which is that I regard, in a kind of David Brooks way, little pods of hazelnut coffee, that's just tearing our society apart. We will just be steamrollered by Russia and China and North Korea if we start drinking hazelnut coffee. It'll be like Red Dawn, except all the high school kids go, you want another hazelnut macchiato? They don't go up in the hills and become Wolverines and steal weapons and fight back. No, the hazelnut coffee is not good. All right. So anyway, I salute you. Get as much plastic out of your life as you can get out of it.
I am.
And, you can find even, like food storage things. There are these kind of Pyrexy things that, I guess they have plastic lids. But you know what I'm talking about? It's like a sort of... Yeah. Yeah.
I have some with wooden lids. And I just want to say that I commend Ken for coming up with the analogy the Squid Games. I think that's great. That is what we are living in. But I didn't want to talk political today because I usually do call in and complain about that. So
all right.
I'm on a different track today. Yes. No plastics. Down with plastics. All right.
All right. You've done a fine job, Holly. You've been an excellent caller. All right. So I wasted a certain amount of time. And I own that. But we do have Jackie, Sandy, Scott, Susan. Oh, the famous Susan. Did she win on the Puzzler? I think she might have won on the Puzzler. Anyway, we have some good callers here. We're going to take a break. We'll come back.
Support comes from Newport Mansions, presenting The Gilded Age and Beyond, a conversation with actor Christine Baranski, moderated by host of the Culture Show Jared Bowen, August 7th at the Elms in Newport. Tickets at newportmansions.org.
Elon Musk wants to create a new political party. He's fed up with excessive government spending and waste and graft. And he's mad about the Epstein files. And he did a poll and people were really into the idea. But actually, for the past couple days, he hasn't mentioned it again. He's just been tweeting a lot about Grok. Is Elon serious? Next time on Today Explained.
This afternoon at 3:30.
What do tackling a purse thief, saving snapping turtles, and getting a needle in the eye have in common? They're all moments of everyday courage.
They use a metal speculum to hold your eye open. The same speculum from A Clockwork Orange.
And hear about one man's courageous quest to face rejection every single day of the year. I'm Kyone Wolf. That's on the next Audacious.
Listen Wednesday night at 11. Support comes from Real Artways.
Support comes from Connecticut Magazine. Their July issue is the Best of CT edition. Also inside, remembering the late Paul Newman and the story behind those celebrity billboards on Connecticut's highways. On newsstands and online at ConnecticutMag.com.
Eyes are like the ocean. Her nails are painted green. A cigarette in her mouth and she mouths, hey dear, how you been? Gray skies out the window. but she's a summer breeze. Come and set the tone, not dare come sit down next to me. Susan, her hair hangs like curtains, her smile is warm like June. She blinks in slow motion, just like something in the Looney Tunes. Looney Tunes, you can't tell if she's into you. She's a winding road that I've been running on down since I was 7 years old. Susan, I would love to hold you if I can.
You know what's happened this summer is like the songs that should have been the songs of the summer, or the song of the summer, they just came out way later. That could have been the song of the summer. That's a Mark Ronson song, and it's got all the things that we like about Mark Ronson songs. They're really well produced, and you get somebody else to sing them, and everything that kind of needs to happen. But it came out just too late, and I got to actually. Well, never mind. I won't even talk about that. It's Ask or Tell Me Anything, and our number is 888-720-9677. 888-720-WNPR. I was going to say that I got an email from a very famous, I believe, Pulitzer Prize-winning biographer about the song of the summer in recent days. And I thought, well, that's kind of interesting that somebody like that cares about the song of the summer. All right, so... we're just going to go and take a few of these things here. And actually, I think we should go to Susan right now. I mentioned her before, Susan from West Hartford, who I believe, did you win the Puzzler on Weekend Edition? Is that what you won? You won something really impressive.
Yes, I do think it's impressive. Yes, I did. That was a treat.
You did. They make those hard.
That's me.
Yeah. So, that's right there. That's something that you can dine out on for the rest of your life.
I guess so.
Touched by Will Shortz. I mean, not physically. But.
Yeah, it's also like just talking to Aisha was really awesome as well.
Yeah. All right, what are you calling up about today? Not that,
okay.
apparently.
All right, so I was chatting with Robin, who's taking the calls, and she was an amazing, outstanding student of mine way back when.
Robin was your student?
I missed...
Oh, we need to go out for coffee. I need to know more about this.
Yeah, no, she's terrific, and as I'm sure you know.
Yes.
And so I missed some of the discussion. So if this is redundant, apologies. Early on, you had a caller talking about the Good Trouble protests, which I'm not an organizer of, and you said you think there's too many. Yeah. So my question is, given that a whole lot of us don't like living in Squid Game, to me, it sort of feels like there aren't enough, or not doing anything sort of feels like you're complacent. So my question for you is, why do you feel that way? Is it because you think it's ineffective, or is there something else you think is more effective? I just, expand.
First of all, I totally get why you feel the way you feel, and I'm not in any way casting asparagus on that. No, my fear is that it becomes background noise at a certain point. It just becomes kind of white noise. That another protest. Well, there's always a protest. I mean, in West Hartford, as you know, there's a bunch of people who protest every Saturday morning, every single Saturday morning, right there at the intersection of Farmington Avenue and South Main Street, North Main Street, and I mean, that's fine and good on them, and God bless all those guys in their gray ponytails. But I just wonder, and I think at a certain level that's good, because you're absolutely right. There's a daily outrage. It is like Squid Games. Every day we have to play a whole new game that we've never heard about before, but it really sounds fairly awful, and it seems like some of us might not survive. So yeah, but I do feel that, for example, the No Kings protest on July 4th, which was kind of timed out against Trump's birthday and his big North Korea style military parade, that was really effective, and there were just like way more people protesting than there were at the parade, and I worry that you dilute at a certain point protests, and maybe you're right that we can't be inattentive to what's happening, and maybe it just needs to be combined with other things. For example, today I listened to The Daily, the podcast of the New York Times, and they had this woman on who's a doctor in North Carolina who just sort of had watched the whole evolution of Medicaid for her patients and the ACA Medicaid expansion circa 2010, and was just really describing in detail what happens to patients when they can't afford health care, and she got at some things that I hadn't really thought about that much. And I've thought a lot about Medicaid, but she said, there's people who they just won't seek health care because they don't know how they would pay for it. She gave an example of a woman who had terrible, terrible breast cancer and didn't come in until it was way too late to save her. Mm-hmm. And the reason was she just knew that there was no way to pay for her health care, and she was concerned that she would bankrupt the rest of her family. And she basically laid down her own life rather than do that. And when I think about that, and it's just just so depressing and kind of enraging, and how messed up our country is on the whole subject of healthcare. And you read about people who feel like creative people who suddenly realize that they're here working for their health care and not much else, and then so they move to Germany or something. And I just think sometimes we need to combine learning more with protesting, because I think sitting and listening and learning is another big part of it. And then maybe when you've learned a few new things, you can think a little bit more about what you'd like your next protest to be. And I also think that this is something that benefits from local creativity, but also some kind of centralization. And so, I think here in Connecticut, Indivisible, and yes, run by my friend Jim Chapdelaine, but
yes, he's my neighbor.
So they spend a lot of time talking through what they're going to do, and they have a lot of meetings and stuff like that. And then when they do a protest, they you hope that it can be a sonic boom instead of a little pop gun. So that's my only worry about it. And there might be other activities that we could combine with protests so that we know more, and maybe we know better how to showcase the problem. Because listening to this podcast today, I was thinking first of all, there are people who voted for Trump who are already realizing what's happening. These are people, rural, poor people, for example, who are beginning to realize that the short end of the stick that they usually get is going to be shorter. But I think, these stories, they need to be told pretty widely. And one of the biggest problems that we have, I don't have to tell you this, you already know this, but is that everybody's kind of information reality is very bespoke now because of social media, because of targeting, because of just the general balkanization of the spread of media. Everybody's experience is a slightly different version of the truth. And certain uncomfortable or inconvenient truths are kept away from people. There's just a lot of people who might have voted for the current administration and the current majorities in the House and Senate who just don't know about something like that they don't understand that when Medicaid gets cut back, there are these people who are hardworking people who are almost too proud to endanger their own family's finances and get their disease treated, who are going to really, really suffer. And so maybe we need to find a different way of telling that story that's not a protest. That's all.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you so much.
Well, thank you for all that you do as well. Congratulations once again on having triumphed in a very fraught Will Shortz environment. All right, so what should I do? Well, I guess I'll go to Scott, who is driving. Hopefully Scott's still available. Hi, Scott.
Hello, how are you doing, Colin?
I'm doing just fine.
Excellent, great. So I was thinking I saw your post this morning about the Trump MAGA thing, the Epstein files, and I was chatting with a friend of mine, and there's two fundamental things that you got to consider. One is you're trying to attach logic to the MAGA movement.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's not a lack of evidence online of a lack of cognitive logic in the MAGA movement. The second part of that is kind of like where things go viral, right? Things just happen to hit the collective national zeitgeist. And I think that's probably what this has done within the MAGA movement. For some reason, just the stars have aligned right. Something has clicked with enough people to where it's become a viral thing within that movement. And it is the first time I think we are seeing a national chink where MAGA may be thinking maybe the quote-unquote libs were right.
I don't think they'll ever think that. I don't think they'll ever think that.
Well,
they might think, oh, hold on, there's some stuff we didn't understand, some stuff we didn't know. Going from there to the libs were right, or even maybe the libs were right. So much, I mean, people's kind of existential identities now are just wrapped up in their hatred for the other side. So I think it will take more than just this. You know, I think the other thing that does surprise me, I'm not discounting what you're saying at all, but, you know, to your first point, it just seems like even the most primitive kind of consciousness would, I mean, like turtles probably, you know, at a certain point figure out, well, we shouldn't go over there because they're animals that eat turtles over there. So we should go play someplace where it's safer to be a turtle, you know, given the choice. And I just think this thing, it goes against survival, you know. I mean, if the Epstein stuff comes out and Trump's all over it, which CBTV seems more probable than not, that's a really bad thing. I think it may have a little bit more to do with what I was saying to Susan just now, which is that I think they don't get that reality. I mean, in other words, I don't think they've been told about the reality where Trump was a hound dog and was hitting on chicks for, you know, the entire 21st century and trying to, you know, peep in and be creepy with teenage beauty pageant contestants. And they just don't know that thing about him. That somehow or other, he's just the guy who almost got shot and his ear got bloody and he stood up and he said, fight, and he put his fist. That's what they know. They know this courageous, you know, DC Comics warrior, and they don't know this other stuff. Go ahead.
Yeah, the only point that I think I might make with that is that it's not that they weren't told, it's that they didn't listen.
Yeah.
Or they didn't, because, I mean, it's, you know, amongst a lot of it is, you know, the FAFO, you know, mess around and find out.
Yeah.
And a lot of this is now you weren't paying attention, you had the fingers in the ears. You were told, you didn't believe it or want to believe it. Because, again, as you were saying, you know, and now there's no way to not, there's no way to not know it.
Yeah, well, there might not be. Yeah, I mean, I will say that this is not exclusively confined to them. I mean, I do remember during the 90s having some fairly bizarre conversations about Bill Clinton. Once the Linda Tripp stuff came out, once the Ken Starr stuff came out, and I remember saying, look, he kind of had one job here. You know, he came in with this reputation from Troop Brigade and Jennifer Flowers and all this stuff, and it was just clear back in those quaint times that you had one job, just keep your pants on, you know, for however long you're president. You know you can't do that. And he did it anyway. And I just, you know, but people would go, you know, like, and the journalists like Nina Burley would write these things about how, well, every woman just dreams of being hit on by Bill Clinton. It would just be so cool. And I was thinking, no, she's an intern. No, it's not cool. And if you ask the average Democrat now to explain Chappaquiddick to you, you will not get a clear explanation of Chappaquiddick because they don't want to remember exactly what that was like. So I think everybody does that. Everybody discounts a certain amount of uncomfortable information about their own tribe. This one, I've just never seen people from the affected tribe begging for the information to come out. Well, go ahead, yeah.
Again, they may just still think delusionally that he's not there.
I guess. Yeah, I mean, they clearly think that. Yeah. I just, there's just a little bit of a weird cognitive gap here that I haven't seen before. Scott, thanks so much for your phone call. Well, also got Sandy, Jackie, John, and we will get to as many people as we can. The number is 888-720-9677, 888-720-WNPR. We're going to take a break, then we'll return.
Support comes from the Yale Peabody Museum. Kick off your summer fun at the Peabody. Experience story and playtimes for little kids on the weekends, visits with scientists, and, as always, iconic dinosaurs. Admission is free. peabody.yale.edu.
I'm Asma Khalid. International students coming to the United States to study are trying to navigate a shifting world of immigration policies under the Trump administration. We hear from a counselor at a university about what questions they're being asked by prospective students from overseas. That's next time on Here and Now.
Join us this afternoon at 2.
Summertime is for feeling the sun on your face, eating outdoors, and connecting with your favorite people.
It's also the perfect time to catch up on episodes from Connecticut Public's talk shows.
Whether hiking a trail, relaxing by the ocean, or enjoying your backyard, Connecticut Public can be in the palm of your hand.
Stream any show from ctpublic.org on your tablet or phone. Find us on a podcast platform like Apple or Spotify.
Curate your listening by creating a list of saved episodes and feed your curiosity all summer long.
Support comes from Bouvier Insurance, family-owned and operated since 1959, serving the insurance needs of businesses and families throughout southern New England. Quotes and more information at binsurance.com.
So that was picked by the maestro, Dylan Reyes, our technical producer. The performers are Adam Neely and Lau Noah. You know who would like that is Jen Allen, whose composition opened our show today. It wasn't her composition, her performance opened the show today. So we have, first of all, I have to say some other thank yous. And I'm not sure I know who everybody that I have to say thank you to is, but I'm going to look here too. Let's see. Here. We have Robin Doyen-Aiken on the phones, and Jonathan McPants is the producer of the show. And is Isaac in there too? Is he doing stuff? Yeah, I have no idea. So lots of people, and Joe Koss is in there running the TV stuff. And speaking of the TV stuff, the YouTube stuff, we have a comment from Moose in the Air. And I think this is a really interesting comment about protest, about the routinization of protest, the so-called, by me, routinization of protest. One, Madres de Cinco Mayo are effective over a long term, in part because they stopped being a protest rather than being a predictable occupation of public space. And the second thing was we need to move beyond thinking of protest as an event that will bring down the regime. They have a significant role as a place to build relationships, networks, and thinking about next steps. I think that's all true. It's a really good point, and maybe one I hadn't really, added to my thinking enough. Because certainly I went to the first big protest of 2025. I can't remember what date that was. It was raining. I remember that. And, there was a little bit of a vacuum, a little sort of blank sound spot where the PA system wasn't really reaching the crowd that well, one part of the crowd. And people just started talking to one another and, in fact, making some contacts or seeing somebody that they hadn't seen since before the pandemic, but realizing, they share a lot of the same values. And that's why they're both standing in the rain right now, listening to people talk. There's other things that go on at protests. And I was probably oversimplifying it and saying, oh, look, see, there's 12 million people standing out there. You have to resign. That's really not how it works anyway. And there are, Moose in the Air, he, she, or they, has a really good point that, it isn't really about, we think about protest, particularly people my age think about protest in terms of the Vietnam War. And I think we kind of read that story or absorbed that story a little bit incorrectly too. There are many things that caused the gradual cessation of the Vietnam War. And protests were one of those things, but certainly not the only thing. All right, so let's talk to Sandy in Cranston, Rhode Island. And so, Sandy, you have the floor.
Hi there. As I've been listening, I've been thinking of segues, from the topic I have into the topics we've had. So I want you to know that I do still have my pants on.
Okay.
And that I think that what I'm going to talk about is going to lean into versions of the truth and outrage and coffee and politics. So I want to talk about the tariffs on Brazil and how the focus of the conversation seems to be that the price of coffee might go up. And, I don't want the price of coffee to go up, but there's something I think a lot more important that isn't getting very much attention, which is that it seems like we now have a new pillar of U.S. foreign and economic policy where it's being determined by Trump protecting the corrupt right-wing authoritarians from prosecution in sovereign states. And so that's what's going on in Brazil. And of course, Trump had nothing to say when Lula was tossed in jail, but because it's his friend, we're going to raise the price of coffee. And it happened a few weeks ago with Netanyahu, where we interfered enough so that they dropped. They decided they were not going to pursue charges right now against Netanyahu. So those, to me, are a lot more important than the price of coffee. And I'm wondering if there's anything we can do to make them more of a focus of the public discussion besides my calling in and speaking to you and whoever gets to hear your show.
Yeah. Well, I think one area of our common wheel where it is a big point of discussion is the business community, because the business community is already freaked out by all these tariffs and by just how many and the constant capricious adjusting and readjusting of these tariffs, and it makes any kind of prediction difficult. And the business community likes to know what's going to happen next. They'd rather know what's going to happen next than have certain outcomes. It's more just tell us what it's going to be so we can plan for it. So, and I think this, both from the point of view of the business community and anybody who uses any kind of economic theory for any purpose, is so freaking weird. This idea that you'd have a bunch of tariffs that nominally from the jump have been about trade imbalances. That's Trump's fundamental argument about why we need tariffs, because they don't buy enough of our stuff, whoever they are. And so we're not going to buy as much of their stuff. That's his fundamental argument about that. And so, it's hard enough to follow that argument, but you can kind of follow it. And then he says, okay, and then we're going to change the tariff on Vietnam, except unless there's a secondary market for, China or Korea or one of the other countries we're worried about, because we have trade imbalances with them. But, okay, we get it. We understand that. But then if you say, oh, I'm going to change the tariff on Brazil because I don't like what you're doing with Bolsonaro right now. Well, that's a completely different, it's not an inversion, it's just a completely redrawing of the rules of the game. So if you're affected in any way, and one thing that I've discovered is these tariffs, they affect so many different companies, so many business enterprises in so many different ways. And between there's sort of a pincer movement now of what the tariffs are doing to mess up. And one of the things that gets messed up is domestic manufacturing in this country, because domestic manufacturing is, in fact, dependent on the import of raw materials and also on fairly good relationships with markets abroad, because they don't just only sell their stuff inside the U.S. So they're already screwed that way. Then you take away you can add all the changes to the workforce with all these deportations, which are very, very different than how people had conceived of them. I think the first revolt is going to come not from you and your friends, but from the business community. And they helped put Trump in here. A lot of them funded his campaigns. And this can't possibly be what they were expecting, because it's just so destructive of the things that they care about. Anyway, thanks so much for your call. And I'd have a back and forth, but we've got a lot of people want to call up about protests. So let's try to get to at least one more. Lonnie in Glastonbury. Hi, Lonnie.
Oh, hi, Colin. Thank you for taking my call.
Sure.
I so appreciate this conversation. So just bottom line, I've been at the protests and I agree. And as you said, what is the next step? And I'm thinking, and I've been trying to connect to our local Democratic Party and even local Republican Party. I'm getting nowhere. Maybe you can lead me in the right direction. How can we sit down, just have a conversation, find common ground? Kids are going hungry in this country. Kids can't get promoted and graduate high school and can't read. I mean, how can that not be common ground? Let's find something in common we can work on.
I think it's a great point. It's a great point that our differences tend to be exaggerated and our commonalities tend to be downplayed. And a lot of that is it has been worsened by internet culture. Internet culture runs off engagement. What's engagement? Well, engagement typically is fueled by visceral reactions to things. And so what works on the internet, what works on social media tends to be a lot of flame throwing and not a lot of what do we have in common. But I think there are people who are doing this pretty well. I'm always tooting Ezra Klein's horn, but I think what he does on his podcast and in his column is a really interesting exploration of what there might be in common and how important it is to listen to the other side. So I don't know. I have a lot to say about this, but we're actually out of time, so we're not going to say any of it. Thank you.
Why they put coffee in the coffee in Brazil. No cheese, no tomato juice. You'll see no potato juice. The planters down in Santa's all say no, no, no. So you add to the local color, serving coffee with a crawler.